You know, Tocino,
What's up, bro?
I know you're the wrestling guy in the group. You're Mr. Wrestling. You're the wrestling papi. I I'm a back old school, Brock Lesnar, um, Hulk, Hawk Animal, the old Hercules, the original Giant under the Giant. But let me ask you a question: how would you feel about interviewing somebody that knows more about wrestling than you, and he's actually the associate producer for the movie The Wrestler? How would you feel about that, Bacon?
He's here.
Yeah, he's here. He's here. We're making you happy today because you know what? I don't know nothing about the new wrestling. I just know that John Cena has been challenged a few times lately, and he's become a bad guy. And apparently, he's going to go bald. I heard. However, before I keep on talking smack about stuff that I don't understand very well, let's bring on our guest today. He is. Let me read this off to you because you know what, my memory is not that great, and I'm not even going to try to lie to you guys. Mr. Evan Ginzburg, the associate producer for The Wrestler, associate producer for 350 days. He's also the executive producer for Wrestling Then and Now, Alive Again featuring Gary Sinise, senior editor for Pro Wrestling Stories, author, Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets. Mr. Evan Ginzburg, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, good to be on. Appreciate it.
No, we appreciate you. Actually, let's not lie. You see this guy right here? That guy right next to me.
Yeah.
He appreciates you. He's been trying to get your. You have no idea. We love talking about different things and having fun, but today's his moment. He's all about wrestling here. Like I said, I know the old school cats, some of the washouts. You know when Hulk Hogan was the man, and yeah, we'll leave it at that. But while you're here, Bacon, I'll let you have full control today. I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna play the pretty boy today.
Uh what was it about wrestling that interests you in the beginning? From whatever time you started, what was it about it that got your juices flowing that made you do all these wonderful things and throughout your career?
Well, I've been following wrestling over 50 years, and I was a kid. I was 12 years old, East Flatbush, Brooklyn, and it's a rainy, nasty day, and I'm bored out of my mind. This is before video games, before the internet, and I start fiddling with the UHF dial, the mysterious UHF dial, and I'm seeing all kinds of foreign programming and PBS, culture and arts, and all of a sudden, I come upon this massive guy pounding on this Indian, and I didn't even know what it was. I'm a kid, so turns out it was Chief Jay Strongbow on WWWF TV, and I'm a total mark, and I'm like, oh my god! And all of a sudden, Strongbow's making this comeback, and he's doing this herky jerky war dance, and he's chopping the guy who's twice his size, and he beats the guy. And to me, this is like Marvel superheroes and supervillains. I'm a kid, and so I make a mental note. When is this on? And I start watching it every week, and then June 24, 1974, over 50 years ago, I've been begging my dad take me to wrestling, and we go to Madison Square Garden. I walk into the garden, and my first reaction was, wow, it's in color, because we had a black and white TV. I'm like, it's in color.
Oh man.
Yeah. So that night, Nikolai Volkov and Fred Blassie wrestled Bruno and Strongbow, and the Valiant brothers wrestled Dean Ho and Tony Gurria, and Pedro Morales wrestled Black Gordman, who we used to. By that point, I had discovered the LA TV, and I was watching LA every week. Victor Rivera, Black Gordman and Goliath, Hollywood Blondes, John Tolos.
Yeah.
And I was like a kid. I was like a kid dropped into Oz. It was like the Wizard of Oz. They, you think it's real, and every punch, every kick, you're feeling it because you want the good guys, the faces, to win. And what people don't understand about that era is, we were a blue collar mark audience for the most part. This is again before the internet. There were primitive sheets, but they weren't like exposés. It was results and clippings and stuff like that. So, we're watching it like it's real. And Bruno and Pedro would walk down the aisle in a pair of tights, no pyro, no entrance music, no nothing. And on sheer charisma, the building would shake. It would just shake. And it was magic. It was magic. Yeah.
Wow. I was born in '77, and I learned about the WWF when I believe I was like 5 or 6. Had no idea about territories and different areas of wrestling and Mid-Atlantic South. And I, as I got older, I learned about these different territories and didn't realize how the root of wrestling goes beyond my time before I was even born. And that's what also made me a fan, because of all these different areas and how they operated back then compared to now. Wow, that's something.
Well, back then, the territories kept everything fresh. So a lot of the guys you saw in Canada, Maple Leaf Gardens and whatnot, eventually they would come to Madison Square Garden and vice versa. The territories kept everybody moving. So the heels would come in, they would get their run with Bruno, Pedro, Backlund, and then they'd come back a couple years later, fresh again. So Maple Leaf Gardens was that territory was a hotbed of wrestling also back then.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So going back then. Jesus, I feel like a puppy today.
Yeah,
I'm
103 years old, but I practice Tai Chi, so I look younger, man.
That's it. That's the way to go.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
So going back all the way back then, with the different territories, what would you say had the strongest territory? Because the McMahons, you got to give it to them, they had their own, but there were better territories that had something stronger than them.
Oh, yeah. I tell people the greatest wrestling I ever saw was the NWA mid to late 80s. I'd go down. I mean, they came into the East Coast area. I'd go see them in Philly, and you'd have Flair on top with the belt. You'd have the Four Horsemen, Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express, Ivan Koloff, Nikita Koloff, Crusher Khrushchev. You would have mid-card Billy Graham and Jimmy Valiant, who used to headline in WWF. That was, you had low card Rick Rude, Manny Fernandez, guys like that. It was an unbelievable talent, and the house shows were better than any WrestleMania. Believe me, those house shows, especially when they would have war games, something special like that, it beat any WrestleMania. The NWA mid to late 80s was the greatest wrestling I ever saw. And, people are preferential to their territory. So I understand if you grew up on WWF or WWF, that's your choice. But I'm telling you, nothing touched the NWA that era. And by the time they went corporate, WCW, those shows were a shell of what they were in the same arenas. They didn't touch the NWA. The last great NWA run was 1989. Terry Funk and Flair, I Quit match, and Steamboat and Flair. After 1989, they just weren't the same.
Wow.
Now those are names. Those are real names.
That's history right there being explained out to the people who are listening right now.
Greatest match I ever saw live in 50 plus years of attending was Flair and Steamboat at the Meadowlands. Unbelievable. Artists. Those guys are artists.
Yeah, they've had a lot of different sets of matches that stand out. But that one day that you just mentioned, that
they went 35 minutes, and it was wrestling elevated to art. Midnight Express and Rock and Roll Express was wrestling elevated to art. They took it to different places. The WWF was a super heavyweight title. Bruno, could lift 500 pounds, so you had to bring in these big, monstrous, super heavyweights to challenge him. Bruno against Ivan Koloff, Bruno against superstar Billy Graham. Billy Graham as heel champ for 10 months, that was basically the exception to the rule. It was always the face, the beloved face against these monstrous heels. And you bring in guys like Ken Patera, this guy was in the Olympic strongman, weightlifting champion. So he had all the credibility in the world, guys like that. Ernie Ladd, 6'10", would come in and wrestle Bruno and Backlund and Pedro. Some of these guys wrestled all three of those guys. And guys like Greg Valentine went into the next generation. They wrestled Backlund, Bruno, and they wrestled Hogan.
The Hammer.
Oh, Greg the Hammer was amazing in his prime.
Yeah. Oof. Oh man.
Look at you. Now, have you been able to? Were you ever able to meet any of them?
Oh yeah. I would stand outside Madison Square Garden with my dad. I was a kid, and I'd stand out there, and you got smartened up real quick because you go, wow. Lou Albano's nice. Superstar Billy Graham's nice. The Grand Wizard's nice. They're signing autographs. They're talking to you. They're shaking your hands. And then you go, wow. Every time I asked Dusty Rhodes for an autograph, he walked right by without looking at us. Kids. Every time Andre the Giant, we asked for an autograph, he walked right by us without looking at us. And here's the funniest story. The stage door at the Garden where the Knicks, the Rangers, the wrestlers, the boxers walk in, it was clearly labeled 7 feet because they would load in equipment and everything. And it said right on the door, 7 feet. And Andre did not have to duck. That was all hype, the 7'4". That was all hype. The guy was about 6'10", 6'11". Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He'd had the big boots and they'd shoot him from angles.
Yeah.
Stand on boxes. They made him look bigger than he was. I mean, he was a huge guy for that era, but he was not 7'4". That was all hype.
The eighth wonder there.
And let me just say this: Andre in the 70s, he was really good. I mean, I saw him wrestle Kowalski and Butcher Paul Vachon and Ernie Ladd, and this guy could move. He did drop kicks in the 70s. By the 80s, by WrestleMania 3, he was shot. He was a shell of what he was. Yeah. Andre and Killer Khan, early 80s at the Garden was amazing. He was great, but in 10 years, he went from great to like basically immobile. He put on a lot of weight. And, he legitimately broke his ankle at one point, just the weight that he carried around.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm speechless.
yeah. Yeah. So, Evan, moving forward to the 90s.
Yeah.
That's when you start seeing all these superstars coming up, the conglomerate starting to sell or be bought out by the McMahons. As a viewer, as a wrestling lover, how did that make you start feeling and thinking about the sport of wrestling?
I did not like the WWF as, the be all and end all. So I started going to ECW and Joe Goodhart's Tri-State. Joe Goodhart would bring in these amazing wrestlers that we never really saw in New York. He brought in Abdullah the Butcher versus the original Sheik. Eddie Gilbert against Cactus Jack, Terry Funk against Cactus Jack, matches like that. And, this was an indie in Philly. And just to see the original Sheik live, even though he was no longer a kid, and, Eddie Gilbert and Cactus Jack, on the rise, before his WWF run. And even some of the local guys he had on the card, DC Drake and Larry Winters, these guys deserved a larger, forum, because these guys were tremendous. And then there was early ECW at the ECW Arena, which, that came from another planet at the time. Public Enemy, the Gangsters, Sabu. Sabu against Terry Funk in ECW was unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah. They even brought in the Funks. They had Dory and Terry Funk come in to wrestle Public Enemy, barbed wire matches. And so early ECW was great. I think by the end, they kind of jumped the shark. They have 3 tables on fire. And it's like, after a while, it's the law of diminishing values. But so you got 2 dogs. I have 2 cats.
Yeah. That one there lying looking straight, that's Kane.
Yeah.
The other one hobbling around that's Bella.
There you go. Yeah, my wife and I rescued cats that were living under a car out in the cold, and one of their siblings lost part of its tail when it was sleeping in a car engine to stay warm, and the driver turned the car on. So since you got dog and cat lovers here, put out the word, adopt, rescue. There's a whole lot of pets that need a loving home,
For sure.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you very much for saying that. Because
no, I mean, it's sincerely. Yeah, there were 10 cats living under this car in a garage, and the garage owners were very kind, and they were feeding them, and they told everybody they know, please take 1 or 2, take 1 or 2, and finally we did, and I'm glad we did. It like family.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
This is true. Yeah. You're in shock, eh, Bake?
Yeah, like it's insane. Like this is something like I've always wanted to do and learn more about, and like meeting a gentleman like yourself, like you're taking me to times that I wasn't even born that I heard about. Like,
well, that's anybody. My mother went to wrestling in the 1950s, and she was like totally befuddled because she saw Killer Kowalski in the 50s. I'm seeing him in the 70s. I'm friends with him in the 90s, and
wow.
she's like, he was so mean. I can't believe it. And I became friends with Nikolai Volkov, and she's like, I can't believe it. That guy was so mean, and he's such a sweet man, and so
yeah, exactly.
It's all connected,
Oh, for sure. I had a couple of times I went to an actual show. Like I've been on, like I seen the Monday Night Raw here at Scotiabank here in Toronto, and but I've actually went to an event with my grandmother back in the day at Maple Leaf Gardens, and she knew Billy Red Lyons, one of the commentators who was no longer with us, and she knew some of the wrestlers as well. So I would be able to get like autographs from some of the wrestlers and stuff like that. So I'm kind of living out a little bit of here. Like I have the wrestler here playing in the background right now, and I'm watching it and I'm hearing everything you're saying. What inspired you to be a part of a movie like this?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what happened. I was acting as an agent at the time, and I had booked Johnny Valiant and Nikolai Volkov for an autograph appearance, and it was called the Wrestling Universe in Queens, a wrestling store. So people get confused with these titles. The executive producer is the money guy, the guy who raises the money for a film. So the executive producer, Scott Franklin, his best buddy, walks into this autograph signing, and he starts talking with us, and he goes, you guys would be perfect for this movie that Darren Aronofsky's making. Do you know who Darren Aronofsky is? I said, yeah, man, I'm a film buff. I saw a bunch of his films, Pi 3.14, about a math genius, Requiem for a Dream. This housewife's going out of her mind, and the refrigerator's chasing her in her apartment. Like, it's the guy's a genius. And I said, yeah, I know Aronofsky. He says they're doing a wrestling project. You guys would be perfect. So I exchanged business cards, and didn't hear anything for a good 6 months. I almost forgot about it. And all of a sudden I get a call, and we'd love to meet with you and some of the wrestlers and talk about the project. So I'll tell you exactly who I brought. I brought Tiger Khan, who wrestled for the Hearts up in Calgary.
What?
I brought Nikolai Volkov, Nikita Brezhnikov, who was his shoot manager, his legit manager who would book him. And I brought Johnny Valiant. And Johnny and Nikolai, who are both gone now, they and Tiger's gone now, unbelievable. So I brought them, and Johnny did stand-up comedy. He was like the funniest guy on the planet, and Nikolai was just this warm, friendly guy with all these road stories, and we're sitting having dinner with these guys. It didn't even feel like a business meeting. We're just laughing, and it was just like we were old friends by the end of the meeting, and it went on for hours because Johnny and Nikolai were just like regaling them with all these stories. So I knew it went well. So a couple of months go by, and again, Aronofsky's a busy guy. He's always making movies. He just did The Whale with Brendan Fraser. Brendan Fraser won Best Actor for The Whale last year, previous Oscar. That's an Aronofsky film. So to make a long story short, I get the call. Would you like to be the associate producer, the wrestling guy? I said, yeah, I'd be honored, And next thing I know, I'm working on The Wrestler, and that involved doing casting calls. I brought in Ron Killings, Romeo Roselli, Necro Butcher. I did a half dozen or so casting calls with all the wrestlers. And I brought in The Ring. I brought in Mickey Rourke's stunt double, Mickey Rourke's trainer, anything wrestling related. And for 6 months or so, I took Aronofsky and Scott Franklin and the screenwriter and anybody else on the road. And we went to Ring of Honor shows. We went to CZW Cage of Death. That was insane. Wow. We're backstage at CZW Cage of Death, and it was like a mass unit. These guys are all getting stitched up. There's blood everywhere. It was like they were like earthquake victims. You can't.
Oh man,
insane this was.
Yeah.
So so for 6 months, I'm basically on the road with them every weekend because Aronofsky wanted it to ring true. And I'll tell you a quick story where we're at this wrestling convention in Jersey, and it's basically, the guests are like the WWE Hall of Fame. There's Johnny Valiant, Lou Albano, Tony Atlas, the Samoans, Moolah, Mae Young, Greg Valentine. It's just one legend after another signing autographs, and there's nobody there. There's like no fans there. It's dead. It's dead. Iron Sheik was there, and his head was down on the table, asleep. That's how dead it was. It was depressing. And Aronofsky, he was a good-hearted guy. His mom was a school teacher, not a rich kid. He wasn't born into this. He had no connections, just sheer talent and drive. Yeah. And he kept going, Evan, where is everybody? He felt bad for them. There were more wrestlers and vendors than there were fans in the place. It was sad. So next thing you know, they wrote, Rob Siegel, the screenwriter, wrote that scene into the movie. And I'm sitting on set the day they're shooting it. And all of a sudden, I'm looking around, and it looked too antiseptic. I said to Darren, at a wrestling convention, every inch of the table is filled with stuff. It's not this neat and organized, it feels more lived in. So now I'm doing set design for that scene. And Aronofsky looks at me and he goes, Evan, come here. I go, yeah. And he goes, walk around to all the wrestlers, walk up to Mickey last, ask him for an autograph and a Polaroid. All of a sudden, I'm an actor. I never acted in my life. I never acted in high school. Nothing. So Mickey whispers in my ear. He goes, just improv it. Just improv it. So I did what Aronofsky said, except now there's giant cameras in my face and there's 125 or so people watching me, and I'm not an actor. I walk up to Mickey last. The whole time I'm thinking, what am I going to say? And I said to him what I would say to any legendary wrestler. I said, I loved you as a kid. I saw you at Madison Square Garden. Can I have your autograph? And he looks at me and he's improving and he goes, what's your name? So now I'm thinking, and I just instinctively go, Evan. And it dawns on me how surreal this is. I'm playing myself in a fictional movie. How utterly surreal this is. That's it. I'm not making it up. It's right there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So next thing you know, we're at the New York Film Festival, very prestigious. The movie's in the can. There's 2,300 people, $40 a ticket, full house, sold out. And I'm sitting in the audience, and my girlfriend, who's now my wife, my girlfriend at the time, she looks at the screen, she looks at me, she looks at the screen, she looks at me, and she goes, "That's you," because we didn't know if I made the cut. I mean, I didn't edit the film. So then, while we're watching this screening, the scene where Randy the Ram says to his daughter, I'm just a broken down piece of meat. I look around me and everybody's crying. Everybody's crying. And we had worked on this off and on for 7 years. 7 years. And, getting the funding, putting the cast together, doing our homework with everything. And I knew right then and there. I said, it worked. It worked. Nothing, you can't fake crying. Everybody around me. And the film ends, they roll the credits, and it's a spontaneous standing ovation. And I tell people to this day, I said, that was the best day of my life. Best day of my life. It was like being at the Oscars. We walk out, people swarming us. Can you do an interview? Can we get a picture? It just felt like the Academy Awards because it was one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world. And all that hard work, you knew it paid off. And none of us got rich from it. It was an indie film. We wanted to get 18 million bucks. We got 6 million because Mickey's star had waned a bit, at that point. Mickey, I'm a big boxing fan. Mickey was big box office in the 80s, Diner and all these top movies. The guy left to get punched in the face boxing. That's not a normal career trajectory. And so we couldn't get the money we wanted. It was we did it on 6 million bucks. So for a reference point, that would be like the food budget on a Marvel's Avengers movie or whatnot today. $6 million is not a lot of money for a movie. So it was a small indie film, but we're very proud of it. And again, when he says those lines, I'm just a broken down piece of meat, I think it's iconic. I think that line and that performance, he won the Golden Globe, Best Actor in the World. He was nominated for the Academy Award. He lost to Sean Penn in Milk. But that performance is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Well, I wish we could get Mickey to come on board and do an interview like this. However, yeah, you never know in the future.
Here's what you guys do. Seriously, you ask all this. You make a dream list of all your guests, and you ask all of them. And some will say yes, some will say no, some won't respond. It's a numbers game.
It's true.
And the way you entice them is you tell them from the heart, this is what we do, and these were our favorite guests or whatnot. And so, I would I've done radio, TV, podcasting, forever, and I would just make a dream list of my favorite musicians, and and people. Some would come on, and some wouldn't. Same with actors.
Yeah,
that it's a numbers game, really.
Oh, guaranteed. I do want to thank you though for that movie. I mean, I know you had a big part in it. because with that scene in my life, when I finally watched it, I didn't want to get to watch the movie till 2010.
Mhm.
But that was a very epic moment for me in my life. Um, some may know, some may not know it. I was an alcoholic at one point,
Oh,
and when I saw that movie, my girls were with me. My two daughters were with me, and it broke me. It literally broke me, that scene. And that was one of the moments that helped change my life from where it was to where almost to where I am now.
wow. Well, that's really inspirational to hear that a movie could change somebody's life. You know.
Yeah, no, that, like I said, that's really touched me with everything we were going through, and so yeah, definitely, I want to thank you for that. One thing though, Bacon, I know you've been very quiet because you're very starstruck. However, I also host another podcast. It's called The Hot Seat. And what I try to do with our guests every so often, we find one guest that really, really catches our attention and really, 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 really gets into one of ours childhood dreams of meeting artists and stars. And by the look at my friend's face this entire interview, I believe we should hot seat you. For, for those of you just tuning in, this is Evan Ginzburg, associate producer for 350 Days, the movie The Wrestler with the incomparable Mr. Mickey Rourke. And we want to hot seat you. So with the hot seat, what we do is we ask you questions. We ask you to speak from your heart, not from your brain. And you get one plead the fifth moment.
Yeah,
So
yeah, go for it. I pour my heart out. I'll be honest. Whatever you guys want to know.
there you go, Bacon. This is your moment, sir.
What was a lesson that you learned in doing the stuff that you've done uh, over the past years with all the movies and people you've come across?
What I learned is you have to be in it to win it. One thing always leads to another. I was a sheet editor starting in 1990, and I did a newsletter called Wrestling Then and Now, and that got the attention of a radio host, Fred Geobold, on a 50,000-watt New York City radio station, WBAI FM. It's still out there, a major political radio station, but we were an arts program. And because we were on a 50,000-watt radio station, the wrestlers were willing to come on. So, I'd be sometimes in studio, sometimes on phone, and I'd be on the phone with Lou Thez, Fred Blassie, Bruno Sammartino, Vern Gagne, guys like this, Sherry Martel, like the biggest names in history. It was a 50,000-watt station, so it had credibility. And so from there, I started meeting some of the wrestlers. They'd come down to the station. And Johnny Valiant, out of left field from the Valiant Brothers, or younger people might know him as Johnny V from the Dream Team, Beefcake and Valentine. Johnny Valiant says to me, why don't you be my agent, be my manager? And I'm like, I've never done that before. And he says, you could do it. Just like that. So I started booking Johnny Valiant, who had a one-man comedy show, one-man theatrical show. He'd do autograph appearances. He'd occasionally wrestle. And from there, I started booking other people, Jimmy Valiant, Nikolai Volkov, Nicole Bass, Lanny Poffo, et cetera, so on. Just this past week, I spent like a whole week with Tommy Rich. Tommy Rich was over my house. So one thing always leads to another. And because I was doing agent work, as I told you guys before, that got me into The Wrestler. And after The Wrestler, I got contacted by another Darren Antola, and we did the documentary 350 Days. And we billed Bret Hart and superstar Billy Graham as the stars, but there's 36 legends in there, 36. I mean, Greg Valentine, Tito Santana, Abdullah the Butcher, Larry Sharp. I could go on and on and on. Lanny Poffo, it's just 36 legends. A lot of them are gone now. George the Animal Steel, Paul Orndorff. I don't want to bore your listeners with a laundry list of names, but there's 36 legends in there.
Please do.
Well,
Please do.
but what happened was the interesting part of this story is the editor, and a movie is really made in the editing room. His name is Michael Burlingame, and he was not a wrestling guy. And I said, he's perfect because he doesn't know who's the main eventer, who's the undercard guy. He's going to pick the most moving, powerful footage. And I said to Mike, I said, make a movie that would make an 80-year-old woman who never watched wrestling cry. I said, we don't need another movie. You know, the guy's in his apartment. He's got 1,000 action figures. The journalist is in the gym and they're putting him in an arm bar. This has been done 1,000 times. Yeah. I said, let these guys just pour their guts out. And that's what they did. And these guys went to hell and back. We have a segment in 350 Days where they're just talking about their injuries and basically every bone in their body between these guys. Stan Hansen, he's pointing to like body parts, like everything that's been broken in his body. And these guys, Billy Graham, you know, suffered terribly, all kinds of health issues and injuries. And, you know, but they all said the irony of it is we saw the world on the promoter's dime, and we had incredible experiences and met incredible people, and they said we wouldn't trade any of it, even though some of them did not end well. And so, you know, we're proud of 350 Days also. And yeah, I mean, one thing always leads to another. And from all of these stories, knowing all of these people, being friends with some of these people, you know, Lanny Poffo, Greg Valentine, Johnny Valiant slept on my couch many times. You know, these are dear friends. And I roomed on the road with Nikolai Volkov. And I'll tell you a funny Nikolai story. So we do an autograph signing at the Hollywood Collectors Show. And I'm with Nikolai, Iron Sheik, Jimmy Valiant, Lanny, you know, etc., Lou Albano. And they're signing autographs. And we're like, what's wrong with this picture? Because everybody else there, they're actors. This was maybe 25 years ago. And they had a woman who was in the silent film Phantom of the Opera with Lon Chaney Sr. She's like 95 years old. She's signing autographs. And there's the Iron Sheik, like carrying on, yelling. You know, we're like, what's wrong with this picture? So we're heading back to the airport. And this woman, it's a shuttle bus. It's just, you know, hotel guests going back to the airport to catch their planes home. And this woman's looking Nikolai up and down, and she goes, "You're Nikolai Volkov." And Nikolai was always warm and friendly, just a lovely guy. And he goes, "Yes, I am." And she goes, "I loved you as a kid. I used to go see you with my mom," and, you know, blah, 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 the typical. So Nikolai is just such a good guy. And Nikolai goes to the woman, just a stranger on the bus. He goes, "I'd like to introduce you to my partner, the Sheik." Now, the Sheik, you know, this is 20 years past his prime. This is maybe 2005, 2007, whatever. It's all a blur after. So she's looking the Sheik up and down, and she says the absolute worst thing you could possibly say. She goes, "You're not the Iron Sheik," because he looked exhausted. He looked old. He didn't look, you know, like he looked in 1984. So he flipped out. He flipped out on the bus, and he's yelling at the top of his lungs, "You stupid jabroni, get away from me." And now she's running to the front of the bus, you know, like in terror, because the guy's out of his mind. You know? So, yeah, true story. And I tell all these stories in my book, because I was on the road with these guys, and it was an experience. Greg Valentine would take face-forward bumps on the hotel carpets just to get a pop from the boys, you know.
Yeah.
And the people who didn't know who they were, they're like, what is going on?
Yeah.
He's falling face first onto the carpet. You know, he's doing a wrestling bump to entertain us, you know. And
So with all of this,
Nikolai was like early to bed, early to rise, clean living. So he'd wake up 6 a.m. He'd have these old school blocks, wooden blocks that he carved in the old country, and he's doing 300 push-ups 6 a.m. So one morning, I'm rooming with him. He goes, Evan, let's arm wrestle. I go, okay. And I'm not a 98-pound weakling, so I start arm wrestling with him. I cannot move this guy 1 inch, nothing. He used to squeeze apples on the screen on WWF TV in the 70s. The apples would explode into the camera. I'm trying to arm wrestle this guy. Wow. I couldn't move him. So it was a lot of fun and a lot of stories and a lot of losses along the way. You know, we lost a lot of these guys. And so there's tragic stories in the book. There's funny stories in the book. There's non-wrestling stories in the book because I talk a lot about making the wrestler because those are film stories and even teaching. I mean, we waited 7 years to get paid for the wrestler. I kept teaching. I teach adults English second language.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, with all this in your trajectory, who would you say is, in your point of view, has been the nicest off-camera personality, and who has the worst personality?
Okay.
Off camera.
Off camera.
Yeah.
When Nikolai Volkov died, Bret Hart, who met everybody, wrestled everybody, Bret Hart goes back to the 70s, you know. Bret Hart said Nikolai Volkov was the nicest wrestler I ever met. The nicest wrestler I ever met. And I believe that. And I have a story in the book. It's a funny story. I go into this little record shop in Queens, Bayside, Queens, and the owner of the shop would sell wrestling tickets out of that store. But I'm a music guy, so I just love record stores. These old school record stores. There's not a lot left today, and so he says to me, he whispers like it's a secret. He goes, Bubba Ray Dudley's in the back playing video games, he says. So the owner of the store says to me, don't talk to him. He doesn't like to be bothered. You know? So I'm like maybe 40-ish at the time. I'm not a kid, you know. So part of me is like, you know, it's like I don't need to be told to leave somebody alone. And part of me is like, even though I was an ECW fan, I go, you know, Bubba Ray Dudley's not at like the top of my list. He's not Billy Graham, Ivan Koloff, or any lad. You know, it's like, yeah, I'm not like marking out terribly. Yeah. And so the punchline to the story is it's this little tiny record store, and I'm like acting. I have to make believe that I don't even see Bubba Ray Dudley sitting right there. The guy's 300 pounds playing video games. So I don't know if that qualifies, but it wasn't particularly friendly or nice.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. I would have to agree with you on that one.
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, look, I've along the way, I've met some and even worked with some really legendary people. Like we couldn't get the money with Mickey Rourke for the wrestlers. So one night, Aronofsky had me meet up with Nicolas Cage, and I took Nicolas Cage to Ring of Honor. And this guy's humble, you know, warm, friendly, you know, and I'm like, everybody should be like that, because when all is said and done, people are people, you know. It's and true. It's interesting. I've found, especially with wrestling, sometimes the biggest names are the nicest. And some of the nobodies have egos, and that could be partly why they're nobodies, because people realize these guys are, you know, not easy. They're difficult. And any project you work with is a team effort. When you make a movie, you better be on time. You better have your A game. We shot The Wrestler in 7 5-day weeks, 35 days. So you better know what you're doing and be prepared. And there's not a lot of time to screw up. So, and if anybody's difficult, has a big ego, it's like, it's just not going to work. And, I see today wrestlers making public statements. Do not approach me and ask for an autograph. It's like, over the years, I've walked up to Muhammad Ali. He's signing for everybody in the street, the most famous guy in the world. No ego, no ego. And I have a story on Ali in the book. At the time, this was probably 2000-ish. At the time, he already had Parkinson's and was shaking a little, and he wasn't talking. But he was walking down the street near Madison Square Garden. I forget what the event was. Probably a boxing show. I'm a big boxing fan. And he's signing for everybody. Anything you put in front of him. As he's walking, he's signing, and he's not really talking because he had the Parkinson's. And one guy brushed lint off of his jacket. He had a nice jacket on because he wanted the champ to look at it. It was very moving. It was very like that little detail stuck with me all these years. And I have a story in the book. I went to see Richard Pryor when he was sick. I went to see him do a performance at this it's called Westbury Music Fair in Long Island in New York. And he's not well. He's not walking well. And his movements, you could see he's not healthy. And he sat through the entire set, and he had giant cue cards in front of him. And this was like a shell of Richard Pryor. I have friends who are stand-ups, and they look at Richard Pryor like the god of comedy, like the number one guy ever. And so he does 45 minutes. Previously, he used to do an hour 45 or 2 hours. He's got these giant cue cards. And it was sad, but the show ends. Everybody spontaneously rises in a standing ovation, not for that show, but for him, who he was, out of respect. And as he struggled back to the dressing room, struggled to walk, everybody was touching him. Like we knew we'd never see him again. It was over. And that was one of the stories I wrote in the book. I wrote this book pretty much during COVID. Everything was shut down, and it was a hard time. And I just had all these memories and ghosts and just floating around in my head all those years. And I put it all on paper. You guys remember Roger Troutman from Zapp? The band Zapp?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
The DNA of hip hop is basically James Brown, George Clinton, and Roger Troutman. Really. I mean, Funky Drummer, the James Brown cut is on thousands and thousands of hip hop tracks.
Okay? Oh
yeah.
So I go to see Roger Troutman and Zapp. Where? The World Trade Center. People forget they had concerts every day at the World Trade Center all summer. This is late 90s. So, unbelievable show. If you ever want to see a great performer, just watch Roger Troutman and Zapp, old footage of them. So, I'm waiting to meet him. He comes out. He's dressed sharp. He looks like a star. My friend had taken a award-winning photo of him, and I gave him the photo. And the guy was nice as could be. And I said to myself, this was a perfect day. The weather was beautiful. The concert was great. The guy was great. Roger, meeting him was great. And here's the punchline to the story. A couple of years later, he gets into an argument with his brother who was in the band, and his brother shot him dead. Shot him dead. And then the brother, realizing what he had done 4 minutes later, kills himself. Kills himself. And then they blew up the World Trade Center. So the punchline is, this was a perfect day, a beautiful day, a happy day. And you would have said somebody was out of their minds if they told you where this was all heading. Because this was happy party dance music, you know. I mean, you never would have imagined this guy would come to a violent end, you know. And yeah, if you check out, you know, all these old hip hop tracks from the '90s, that's Roger Troutman, California Love, you know. Yeah.
Oh, guaranteed.
Yeah.
Well, Evan, we've come to the end of the show. I do want to thank you before we go anywhere else, because you've made my partner here, my very good friend, my touring partner, very quiet and very starstruck for once.
Wow.
And I appreciate that.
I appreciate it.
For sure.
Yeah, it's fun just reminiscing, and a lot of memories over the years. The good, the bad, and the ugly of it all. You know,
There you go.
Tough business.
Oh, for sure. But before we go, we always ask our guests to give us some words of advice, some words of empowerment for our viewers. So we'll put the mic on you and let you have your moment, sir.
Oh, absolutely. Seize the day. Seize the day. It's never going to be March 26, 2025 again. Do something special. Realize that what's really important in life, I'm older than you guys, what's really important in life is friends, family, helping people, following your muse, you know, your passion, whatever it is, singing, dancing, writing, filmmaking, rapping, whatever the case may be, painting, it doesn't matter, photography, whatever it is, follow your muse, and, you know, find some kind of spirituality. Doesn't have to be religion, it can be, but I practice Tai Chi and yoga, and help people, you know, whether it's a cat, a dog, or a person. There's a lot of people in need. And basically think about how fast the last 20 years went in your life. No matter how old you are, that's how fast the next 20 are going to go. And live every day like it's your last, because one day it will be. So enjoy and take chances, you know, do things you always wanted to do. Don't be scared of failure. Don't be scared of people saying no. You know, you hear all these stories. Somebody had a project and 1,000 people said no, and the one person said yes. And then the guy, you know, it's a classic. And we worked real hard to get that funding for the wrestler. It didn't just happen. So you have to, be driven, drive, and surround yourself with mutually supportive friends and family who love and respect you, and unload the people that suck the life out of you, that drain you, that are drama. You don't need it, and don't feel guilty about it. And that's advice from an old guy, and I hope it helps somebody.
Ladies and gentlemen, what we did here today, again, is something very special. And the simple fact that here at Abiertos, we listen, we learn, and we inspire. And Mr. Evan Ginzburg here tonight just inspired myself and to those who have been watching the recording here today. Want to thank Mr. Ginzburg for being with us today. And just to go off of what he said, seize the day.
Yeah.
Make it your own. You know, we get the opportunity to wake up each day and make it the best day ever. Some days are not going to be the greatest, but learn to embrace those as well. Because the good days and the bad days help create who you are as a person and how you handle them. So support yourself and have yourself surrounded by those who love, respect you, who look out for you, who have your best interests in their mind, as you would have their interests in your mind. MC Bacon, salute. See y'all next time.
Bueno, mi gente, like we do every single week, I want to thank our guest, Evan, for being here, for letting us put him shortly on the hot seat, and more importantly, for sharing his wisdom, his life, his adventures, and letting us look into why he is who he is. It was a lot of fun to hear this. It was a lot of fun to see Bacon starstruck completely and hearing some of the names that came up, having memories from my childhood appear, and being able to share something that, due to a movie, due to a part of my life, was changed. If you haven't seen it yet, I recommend you go take a look at the movie The Wrestler. If you haven't followed him, if you haven't paid attention to who Mr. Evan Ginzburg is, let me put up a quick pic there for you guys. The guy in the black jacket, that's the one and only Evan Ginzburg with Mickey Rourke in the movie The Wrestler. Make sure you check him out, follow him on all his socials. And remember, more importantly, above everything else, keep today special. Remember that tomorrow, you don't know if it's going to be there. The past is the past and it's already gone. But like it's always said, the present is a present for a simple reason, because it's here today and it's your gift to you. So gift yourself a smile, give yourself some love. And if you're given the opportunity, give yourself a moment with a wrestler or an icon, a guru like Mr. Ginzburg.